Hi everyone. So I'm here to present for Canada. We're going to start, we're going to hit the pulses facts about Canada and go through some S&D numbers of different commodities. Then I'm going to summarize the market situation for the coming year and some highlights on the logistics situation due to the coronavirus and a couple of strikes happening in Canada. And after that, if time permits, I can take a couple of questions. So the first slide, as you all may know, and some of you guys might not know, Canada is one of the largest producer of pulses in the world. We export to about 120 countries. We plant about 9.5 million acres, 9 to 9.5 million acres every year of pulses and plant-based protein. Our value of exports is about $2.7 billion industry. One of the reasons that Canada has been able to increase acreages year over year is, of course, our partnership between different researchers, universities, the government, and of course, the private enterprise. Getting into some numbers, so lentil production, last year, I just wanted to highlight, that's the highlighted areas where generally the lentils are grown. The combined acreage between two provinces, which is Alberta, Saskatchewan, and a little bit of Manitoba, was about 3.6 million acres. We hit some numbers. I've broken up by different commodities. Green lentils, as you may know, come in 3 different sizes: Lairds, Richleas, and Estons. Lairds are the bigger one, which gets imported into India, into southern India. Based on last year, we have about 1.2 million tons of seeded acreage. We had about production of about 600,000 tons and a very small carryover. Coming into this year, in September, we had about 63,000 ton carryover, and the acreage was at a decline just because of the prices coming down. Going forward, we expect in 2020 for the acreage to further take a dip. Reason being, red lentil prices and green lentil prices have been at the same level, and agronomically and from a yield perspective, reds do better. So we would see a slight decrease in acreages of Lairds and an increase in reds, and I'll cover the reds in the next slides coming up. Richleas, most of it is grown in southern border, like in the US. We grow a little bit of that commodity, about 48,000 acres, about 52,000 acres this year. Not a big amount, but it still influences some prices in some destination markets. Then we get into Estons Production. This year we saw a slight decrease. If you see the 2019 graph, it's about 362,000 acres. We had about a 60,000 ton carryover coming into the year. We produced about 232,000 tons. Next year we're going to see a decline again. It's just that till the carryover stabilizes, we might keep on seeing this decline in acreages of green lentils. So just to summarize, and this slide maybe gives you a wholesome view of the export and the production situation. So coming into 2019, we had a production of about 792,000 tons. We had a carryover 127. We expect to export about 700,000 tons. And then, of course, 137,000 tons is going to go into seed and feed and waste for the following year. If you look at 2020 forecast, the situation is stabilizing. So if the S&D situation stabilizes, that generally points to little downside, but a higher upside. This slide just explains you what our export numbers were on just green lentils. It's about 600,000 tons last year. From August to December this year, we have already exported 158,000 tons. So, and I think another 100,000 tons is already committed for Jan, Feb, and March. So you're looking at about 258 to 300,000 tons of product moving out of Canada by March. So we're very well on track on achieving that 700,000 ton number. Might be shy a little bit, might go over, depends what April, May, June, July brings. Red lentil, I guess that's more relevant for some people here. Coming into the year, so actually let's hit on 2018. We had one of the largest carryovers in Canadian history for red lentils, and that resulted in all 15-year low in red lentil prices worldwide. Combine that with production out of the Black Sea, we pretty much were at a rock bottom, and there was hardly any room for the prices to go down. Coming into 2019, of course, the carryover situation got better. Our demand side got better because India came back into the market. Turkey has not been able to secure enough supplies from Black Sea, so they're tapping into Canadian red lentils right now. And Australia expected a bigger crop, but they fell shy of some numbers which they were expecting. So going forward, I think we're going to export about 1.37 to 1.4 million tons, maybe a little higher depending on how Turkey's situation pans out in May when their crop comes. That's going to be a very significant shipping program. Now what that will end up doing is for the coming year, 2020, even though we see a slight increase in acreages, reason for that is the prices have stabilized, and as I mentioned, green lentil prices and red lentil prices are pretty much at the same level on the farm side. And given the yields and the agronomical structure of growing reds, farmers are going to increase some acreages on reds, which is not much, but we would see some increase. But even with that, in 2020, we don't expect a higher supply situation than what we have today. This is just breaking down what the production is, what the export numbers, as I mentioned, 1.4 million tons, 200,000 tons of carry-in, and then next year we only expect, after the 2020 carryover, about very small carryover into 2021. So, one of the key highlights of this number is if you look for August 19 to December 2019 number, we have shipped close to about 458,000 tons. I think that number is close to 500 because some of the exports were categorized into a lentil category and not a red lentil category. So we have shipped about 500,000 tons. Our expectation, as I said, is about 1.4 million tons. And I think for Jan, Feb, and March, Canada is already committed to about 250 to 350,000 tons. Which is already on the books and which needs to be shipped out. So with that number, by March 31st, we should be around 800 to 850,000 tons out from the Canadian ports. The total lentil production, even after all the turmoil and situations around the world with lentils, we still managed to produce and ship a lot of lentils. That gives you some highlights of our total lentil production. We had about 2.1 million, 2.2 million lentil production with about 629,000 ton carryover, all in which combines all the lentils. Next year, as you see the carryover is coming down, that means we're going to see a very balanced S&D going into September 2020 and going forward. Last year we shipped about 2 million tons with all the turmoil. This year we're expecting to ship a little over 2.15, 2.2 million tons, given what the situation is. And if we keep that number at the same level for next year, we're looking at about a 56,000 carryover into the following year, which is nothing. And that would mean that the prices are going to get firmer and firmer from this point on if the demand keeps on coming to Canadian shores, unless and until our Australian friends come up with a 1 million ton crop. Sanjeev is nodding his head. So total lentil, about 810,000, which includes the greens and the reds shipped out from August to December, out of the total supply of 2.6. And don't forget there is feed and waste, which comes out of that 2.6, and the seeding for next year. And there's always going to be about 100, 200,000 ton carryover. So just keep that numbers in line to make better decisions on lentil pricing going into India harvest and then Turkey harvest. Peas, I guess this commodity has become less relevant for India, but I'll still just highlight yellow peas and green peas. Going forward, there might not be any peas coming into India. And I think with China taking over, there are hardly any peas left in Canada to be exported. We increased our acreages this year after a decline last year. We increased our acreages up to 4.26 million tons, 4.26 million acres this year. We had a decent amount of production. I'll just break it up with yellow peas and green peas separately. So this year, our production was 3.6 million tons with a carry-in of 250,000 tons. We expect next year acreages to take a slight dip, just because the farmers' rotation is pointing towards that there will be little less yellow peas going into 2020. From an export market standpoint, we shipped last year 2.8 million tons. We had a carry-in of 500,000. This year we had a carry of about 800,000. We going to ship 2.6 million tons. Next year we will have, sorry, not the carry. We're going to use about 800,000 tons for feed and waste. Our carry was about only 246. Our carry next year going into 2020, we expect about 500,000. There could be less, given that we are seeing pent-up demand by China, and I'll just hit on those numbers on the next slides. We expect more acreages happening for 2021, so we're expecting more feed, seed, and waste. And just how the market has been developing on feed side for yellow peas and into pet food. We just see a continuous increase on the feed side of the peas into North America itself. We expect about 330 to 400,000 tons of carry-in going into 2021. Now this number needs to be really closely looked at. If you look at number of total exports, just 93%, 93 for 2017-18. And August 2019 to December, we have shipped close to 1.4 million tons of yellow peas. And I think another 500,000 tons is already being committed for Jan, Feb, March. So we are around 2 million. Our total expectation of exports is 600. So we have pretty much committed 80% of our supplies already. So only 20% of the supplies are left. And these supplies are committed to China. Of course, there are no peas which can come into India for Jan, Feb, and March. So these peas story is, from S&D standpoint, could shock a lot of people that only 20% of the peas are left in Canada now, and the farmers are not willing sellers till they see the new crop coming. So liquidity on the buy side of peas is going to dry up. It's already drying up. Even if the bids keep on going higher, there is no participation on the farm. So just keep that in mind if anyone is trading into Bangladesh or Nepal or Pakistan. Green pea production, it has been a roller coaster a little bit for green peas. Nobody knows if after changing the HS code, if India is going to import or not. But without India, we have predicted these numbers that this is how it's going to pan out. Green peas, we came in with a significant increase in acreages this year. It went from about 450,000 tons to almost 600,000 tons, thereby having a bigger crop. Now that bigger crop has a lot of issues. I think about 25 to 30% of that crop is not the quality which is a standard quality for all the destination markets. So that commodity is going to move into China more so than any other country, which is like 10%, 15, and 20% bleaches. Next year we will see a dip in the production acreages, but we're not anticipating a significant dip, because even after a higher production this year, we have seen prices move up, demand move up, and China being a very aggressive buyer for the past 3-4 months on yellow peas. Again, some S&D numbers, some export numbers. Last year we did about 410,000 tons of exports. We came into this year with 563 and 65 of carryover. We're going to use about 100,000 tons into feed waste and seed. And we expect to export about 440,000 tons, out of which about 50, 60 was dependent on ISC demand, Indian subcontinent demand from different regions. And if India does not participate, or if things don't change, which we don't expect it, that India is going to open up for green peas, I think that 441 number might look like 390. So that means we might have a higher carryover going into 2020 and then going forward. Green pea prices are supposed to remain stable to a little firmer this year till we get the new crop with the good quality in abundance. We exported about 125,000 tons from August to December 2019, which is about 75% of the expectations. It is a little below. We're not hitting those numbers. China was, as you say, 40,000, about 22,000 came to India. I don't know how it landed into India, but it did. Nepal was 18,000 tons, Colombia, Philippines, and then other countries took about 30,000 tons. So the S&D is looking very balanced. The Canadian farmer is committed to holding on to their stocks and not getting into a panic selling mode. Of course, after the coronavirus in China and what effects it's going to bring on demand, it's still something which is unknown. Chickpeas production, this includes Desi, a very small Desi production in Canada, but the majority of it's Kabuli. It's grown, as you see, in the highlighted region, not a very big acreage, about 400,000. Why we wanted to highlight this Kabuli? Lately, Kabuli has been going into Indian subcontinent, the 9 mm and the 8 mm which Canada produces, and it has been steadily moving into some Middle Eastern countries. But Pakistan has been a very aggressive buyer of Canadian Kabulis for the past 18 months. We had a significant acreage increase last year, which resulted in a bigger crop. We had a decrease in the acreage, but we still have a lot of stock. We almost had 100,000 ton carry. About 50% of this crop is damaged, high green damage, 30%, 40%. So that is going to work into feed or maybe some other markets where it can be segregated. So you have to discount about half of this crop, which is not going to make a retail or a human consumption market. And then next year we expect a significant decline because the weather didn't support last year, and the farmers know that they're sitting on a very high inventory of product. This was our export numbers. We did about 150,000 tons last year, about 129 is expected this year. And next year we see this number very flat, no big movements. We did about 60,000 tons of export, and as you can see, Pakistan has been a consistent buyer in 2018-19, and from August to December, it has been the #1 buyer for Canadian Kabulis. Market summary. So chickpeas declining by 44%, green lentils declining by 11%, red lentils going up by 15%. This is all for 2020. This is for planting April, May, June, and harvest September, October. Yellow peas, we might see a decline just for agronomical reasons, and green peas more or less stable, up 2% or down 2%. It's just too close to call. Couple of updates. I know India, there are a lot of buyers of red lentils. The coronavirus has affected a lot of incoming containers from China into the West Coast, and that is one of our major supply of containers coming into the country for exports. So there have been close to 26 blank sailings from Jan till now. The container supply has been significantly limited, which means that even the Feb-March cargo, which people are looking for, might or might not ship. And if there is any pent-up demand which comes to the Canadian shore now, logistically we can't ship that product. What ended up happening on top of the coronavirus and the shortage of container availability is the First Nations. So Canada is trying to build an oil pipeline from the Alberta sands into sorry, just one more minute, into different parts. And the First Nations have blocked all rail transportation, which is going to affect all bulk movement of cargo, which is bulk vessels and container shipments. So whoever is planning on this supply, please be cautious that there could be a month, 2-month delay, or maybe more, depending on both the situations panning out. Thank you. I hope that helps you with your planning for the coming months.